So here we've got Guild Wars 2. We're firing it up with the default UI selection. You can see things down here are pretty normal. The menu is really tiny and some of the words can be hard to read. The model of the character here though is, I mean, insanely crisp and detailed. The modeling on the armor and the character itself, I mean, looks better than anything I've seen.
Yeah.
Looking, you know, on a 1080p, whether it's a single or multi-monitor, and it's almost like hyper-realistic in this sense.
Right.
So hit the little play button down there.
Which was little.
Yes. Okay, so here we are. You can see here that the UI is fairly small. Down here at the bottom, most people get to the point of memorizing the options that they have picked for the 1 through 0 for their loadouts, but your information up here on your quest and the maps at this size is quite small. That's as big as it gets at the default in that postage stamp size down there. I've unfortunately, or you know, just my play style, generally play fairly solo. I'm not an active member of a guild, but if you are an active member of a guild, the chat window down here, the text would be very tiny at this size. And then you can see the cursor itself is rather large. I mean, it would cover up your whole character's head. So when you come up here to the tooltips, these items, it's covering up the first couple of words. And so it can actually make it difficult if you don't remember what each icon does. But we're going to look at the options. Oh, and the interface size is actually set to small. I guess I set it to small earlier on when I was playing. So this is small UI. So normal here.
It's bigger, but could still could go larger again.
Right. Then we have large. And I'd say you're getting close to readable at a glance. It's still pretty tiny down here in the chat window, I would still say would be difficult, and some of the stuff up here might be as much as you use that. But the items down here, the icons are fairly recognizable, but the tooltips that come up, the text is still quite small. We go to larger.
That's not bad.
So here we see that's as large as it gets. Fairly readable at a glance. It's a very fine font already. It's a very thin line font. So.
But that's pretty good. I'd be happy with that.
So I'm going to. We'll just run around for a minute. We're getting. I had it set on auto detect, so we're here at running about 30 frames a second.
That seems awfully flat at 30 frames a second. Is VSync on?
Let me see. Yes. Okay, so now we're at 41. And for the options here, I chose the auto detect for what it thinks my settings should be based on my PC. And it actually puts everything at the highest options. So at 4K on an R9 290, it's auto detecting everything at max, and that's giving us 40 frames a second.
Okay. I'm starting to see some tearing as you're sort of moving around there a little bit. Which seems to be a common theme, you know, you turn VSync on and you get no tearing, but you get this input lag that no one likes, and you're locked to 30 frames a second rendering, or you put up with a bit of tearing. But it seems like the higher performance your GPU or the lower requirements of the game, then the less tearing you get.
And I would say that the tearing tends to come like when you're running and turning fast. And you know, when you're sitting here in combat, that's really not an issue.
Right. But unfortunately, you're probably more focused in combat and less likely to notice tearing in combat than you are when you're just running around looking at where you're going next.
And I think that's similar to what you found in Dirt. We were seeing far more tearing than you were noticing.
Right.
I would recommend Guild Wars for this. The whole thing about an MMO, or the goal is to create an immersive world for you the character to inhabit. And I mean the world that is created here is much more detailed, and it, I would say, helps that factor.
Yeah, it does look stunning. I mean, we swapped between 1920 and 1080 and then the 4K, and there's a noticeable difference in clarity, crispness, textures that you can see, like the detail in the textures that you can see.
And even if you come in here, and I'll zoom in while we're fighting this guy, I mean, but you can get down to individual blades of grass that are very uniquely noticeable.
I think just like the textures on the armor and things like that, rather than just, oh, he's wearing armor, you're like, oh wow, I can see every detail on the texture of that armor. It is nice eye candy. So you're running around roughly around 40 to 45 frames a second.
Even in combat there?
Yeah. Sometimes as you're panning around like that, it drops to about 35, but I think it's more to do with rotating in the world than it is with the sprites in front of you.
Right. And in all of the testing I've done, the benchmarking, when I was benchmarking Guild Wars 1 for CPUs, and when I did Guild Wars 2 here for like some of the APU stuff, twisting and turning, no matter what the monitor setup and graphics card setup, has that tendency to create that turning and tax the system most, I found. And so I would say that's not unique here, and I would pick routes that cause me to have hairpin turns to see how much it would cause the system to bear down.
Oh wow. When you lifted the camera up like that, your frame rate went up to 70. So it's like the draw distance of the world, it has the biggest impact on your frames per second. So you're at like nearly 80, you're at the mid 70s, now you're at 80.
And then all I gotta do is tilt down.
Yeah, and then you've dropped to 40. Which is not surprising. I mean, you're drawing further, there's more objects to draw in, textures to load.
So I'm going to run out here to a relatively safe place and then close down.
It looks nice. I would play this game on 4K. I don't think the 30 Hz refresh rate of the monitor is affecting you at all.
I would agree, and I don't think we've seen on anything that 30 Hz, well, except for the shooters, the Twitch shooters.
But even Lasky was happy to play at a high rendering frame rate on the 30 Hz monitor.
Right. So the refresh rate of the monitor is proving not to be the barrier. It's having the horsepower to push the panel and keep the rendering engine at 60 or above.
Right.